walkthrough. I didn't know you said at that meeting that you articulated your wish list, but I don't have anything in writing.
Well, you were taking notes the whole time. I thought you were taking into consideration some of the things that weren't done properly and stuff like that. So I saw sort of pages you did, none of them on here. But
Okay. So if you want
yes,
to
we did.
provide that list of what I missed, I'll make sure that we're able to address it and attach those.
So Sean is scheduled to be back here with a update, did you say?
No, ma'am, what I said was, Sean is scheduled to be here to do our second phase of the design for phase 2. There was a committee meeting where I went to have so that he could start going for the final design. At that last meeting that you all had, you talked about where you wanted to have an amphitheater. We took suggestions from everyone, and so that schedule, I believe, is that the 16th or 17th? 16th is a Thursday. The 16th. That's what we're anticipating. Okay. Now, speaking of phase 1, Councilman Jones asked for information, so I provided for you all here. All the information in reference to invoices, payments, copies of contracts, copies of checks, list of all vendors that I believe you prepared some time ago at the mayor's request, and that's what this is.
Just to clarify, the punch list, have these been taken care of?
This is what's left of the punch list. Based on the punch list that we had from football, baseball, and Mr. Reed, that we had done one for EDC. This is what is left.
But you don't know if this is done or not done?
We will confirm that when Sean comes on the 16th. We'll do a walkthrough.
Okay. Any questions for Henrietta on this?
But we did spend $1.6 million on that field.
The total contract, I believe,
I'm looking at the total checks.
the total, well,
Are we gonna discuss this big thing?
No,
We
he's
just
just
got
asking.
it today.
No.
it took us a little time to go back and get everything that the councilman
Well, we
requested.
already got all this, we already have all this information, correct?
Yes, sir, and it's been
Why are we
online.
getting it again?
Because it was requested by one of the council, and the rules are that if one requests it, everybody has to get a copy of it.
The total amount for this contract is $2,222,300 is the total amount for the contract.
Both of them.
For phase 1 and 2.
Phase 1 and
Phase 1, the total amount of this contract is $2 million. There's more because of grant, this is for phase 1. There's another portion for phase 2.
So this, for phase 1, you're saying it's $2 million?
$2,222,000. That's what you have there.
Any other questions?
May I make a comment? I think Councilman, and like that, Councilman Johns is like unaware of how much it costs. The city put 1.2, I believe, and we got some help from the UDC, about 1.2, something like that. So it's a little bit over about, because we got a little.
Plus the grants.
That's
No
right.
grants on phase
Phase 1.
Phase 1 has no grants.
Phase 2 actually is the grant portion.
Yes, a great project.
Right.
I was just looking at what we got.
Because,
money spent.
and then it's just for your information, council got a loan on that.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay,
Thank you.
if not, we're moving on to item 4B, consideration action. I think this is to approve engineering fees for the wastewater system improvements. A word is left out of the agenda. So, Mr. Heimer, you get to come back up.
And by the way, it is his birthday, so we have to become his.
I think there's 2 birthdays today, isn't there?
I was hoping you would say that.
Happy birthday to Henrietta Turner and
No,
to
no,
Larry
not
Smith.
Not yet.
Oh, not yet? Oh, okay. Happy birthday to Larry Hunter.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much, Mayor
May
and
God
Council.
bless you, give you a lot of great health and prosperity.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time, the opportunity to work with the city too with these big projects. The purpose of this request is because of the way our contract is structured, USDA requires that we go to council with any amendments to our contract. And I can kind of give you a real quick summary. You know, the number appears, I realize appears to be large. The total amount of the money that's in our contract is $1,135,845. But Just to give you some background on that, how that fee was arrived at, there's a basic engineering fee which includes design and construction phase services related to admin of $675,000 of that number. There was about $90,000 of that was work that we did in 2014 to get the application in for the project for the city. That the city contracted separately at that time, but then the city was reimbursed through our contract for that environmental report and that other preliminary engineering report required to get the grant and the loan. But so our total, kind of basic engineering fees and that initial work that we did for the USDA grant was $765,000, and that started back in 2014. So that goes back over 4 years ago. Then in our contract, we had to include geotechnical engineering services, which is all borings and work related to the ground surface and what we were dealing with the new structures. It included construction materials testing. We had a Terracon come out and do concrete strength tests, take samples, check densities, do all the work associated with the contractor's work as it was going on through this 1.5 to 2 year period. And then we also had to have a resident project representative at the site every day when the contractor was working there to provide daily reports and photographs of progress through this year and a half of time, construction time. So all of those items came out to be $371,000. So when you add the basic services and these additional items that were rolled into our contract, that's where that big number came from, $1,135,000. And so at this point in time, I've described, I'm not sure if y'all got my letter or not, but I have submitted a letter to the city describing what we're asking for. Basically, we've done plans to provide some additional enhancements to the project for related to safety issues, grading and some railing and things like that became apparent that would be required to provide the utmost safety of the operators on the plant. We also have, basically the project initially was scheduled to be complete by the end of May. And the reason that we're at where we are today in August and completion in September is just because we've done the change orders to address some of these enhancements. There were some rain delays. And so the project time is gone about 3 months, 3.5 months further than what we originally budgeted back in 2015. So 3 years later now we're at where we're at. And basically going through that plus the additional time of our resident project representative Gary's time to be at the site every day, that amount is about $47,600. And so our request is to the city that we understand that all the funds for this work is coming from the proceeds from the USDA grant. And so, as I said earlier, there is about $118,000 of money left right now. There's some money in our contract that just needs to be moved around that will address additional cost. But again, my proposal or my request is that if there are funds available to cover these costs that we're incurring, we would like to get the city approval to do that. But again, it's all contingent upon where we end up here when the project is complete. So.
Do we have any totals?
I apologize that we didn't have the totals. However, we can speak to that Betty Soto said that this is within line, and I can get you those references to totals of what he's asking for, because it all is based off of what the final change order can be. What they're asking for is that he's asking for approval to increase his engineering fees, and we can get you those final numbers, but we need to have action so that we can now do the final calculations. So we're asking, but the bottom line is that they're not asking the city to write a check other than the fact that it will be covered in the grant and the loan fees. Is that right? That's correct.
Yes, if funds are available. Again, we understand there's still a lot of things coming together at the end here now. We just want to say that we'd like to have the opportunity to try to recoup some of our costs associated with this additional time if the funds are available.
And so they need permission for us to say yes. Then we will finalize so we can do those numbers. But they say that the city council will be able to, because the engineering agreement is with the city of Floresville. The contractor has to ask Temple for them to approve to any change orders. But in this case, it's saying yes. And it's all based on it has to stay within that time frame, that frame, the parameter of what was funded. But to be able to do that, they need council approval. And we can bring you the final numbers, but it will not come out of the city coffers. It comes out of the budget itself, of the contract, the the USDA money. It does not come out of our pockets.
It'll be grant funds because we've already expended all the loan funds.
Okay. Any questions, council?
I have a question.
Okay.
Grant fees are free,
Yes.
so we don't have to pay nothing from that grant fee?
Right. Grants
So,
are free, loans aren't.
right, but I just want to make sure so the public can know that it's free money,
Yes,
and he wants free money.
right.
And one of the requirements, I'm sorry, Council, one of the requirements is that $7.9 million is what the grant is. I mean, or was it the loan, and the $2.9 million is what the grant is. And we had to spend the whole $7 million before we could start using the grant money. That was one of the requirements. And so what we're trying to do to say is to continue to make Mr. Hunter's company whole. These are the funds because he can generally come back and say, I completed the things and come back and bill us. And so we're trying to get approval that the council is amenable to making these changes and we can come back and bring you the final changes. But it's within the grant funding, correct?
Yes.
I have another question from,
Yes.
what kind of arrangements can we make with those funds helping out that sewer plant? i.e. trees, landscape, other drainage right outside the sewer plant?
No, sir, you have to use whatever was the
Inside.
scope of work that we originally
Inside.
did. It would have to be whatever we were usually told, then we were going to do with the project. Of course, engineering would be part of that
Okay,
scope, but landscaping wasn't a part of the.
I'm just saying, you know, I don't want to come back and say that, well, we have to fix this because of that, and we could have used those funds, those grants. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir, but the only thing you can use this fund for is what we originally said for the scope of work, and landscaping was not part of that scope of work.
Okay. Okay.
But it is part of the scope of work.
It is part of the scope of work for this to do it. As Mr.
No,
Hunter said,
what Mr. Ortiz was, I think, saying is that,
Right.
that we could use to clean out
Enhance.
and clean out the drainages around there because it's protecting that part of.
But
Wouldn't
the
it be-
funds have to be run through our contractor. We cannot go back through another bid process.
Well, it's not this
So
process.
it's got to be through Everlost contract.
Right.
No, I understand that, but when you, that plant that we built there, if it's, whatever,
And how long can the city hold on to those grants?
Well, it needs to be, and again, it needs to be, our goal is to use every penny of that money
Right.
remaining in the grant. And so, but it's got to be done through the, either the contractor's contract or through our contract. And so that's where we are today. As I said earlier, our goal is to, once the plant's in operation, you know, we're going to request the contractor to realign that driveway because that's an issue doesn't impact the operation of the plant, but as you probably well know, there's a sharp turn that comes into the plant where the sludge trucks come in and out of.
Right.
And the plan was to utilize the whole remaining amount of funds that are available for construction to straighten that driveway out. And so hopefully we can do that.
that is part of it.
I just want to hold on to those funds till we know that everything's
Yes.
completed.
Right.
And, you know, because what eventually the city does not get rid funds from engineering firms that make mistakes. We have,
I understand.
we have to pay the bill at the end of the day. And Councilman Johns has a good debate on that.
Sure.
That there was a mistake here and there, but now that we're giving away money, we could probably use those and hold on to them as long as we can.
Right.
Then after that, if everything is exhausted, the contract is done, it's beautiful, it's done, and if there's funds left, I don't see a problem with that. But once everything's completed, it's done, it's okay.
okay, thank you, Councilman. Councilman Nissen?
You have to go by its scope that was written to spend that money.
Yes.
If we don't spend the money on the scope, what is the time frame we got to send that money back to USDA.
Well, once the project is complete and final through USDA, that's the end of the grant. And so,
And if we have money left over, we have to send it back.
oh, yes, well, it doesn't get used by the city, so we want to use it all for.
Right, we want to use it all.
Mrs. Martinez, I think, had a
Yeah,
comment.
I believe based on the letter of conditions, if we don't spend the money within, we started it last year, so we have 4 more years, the money will be lapsed. It'll have to go back to USDA.
Okay, was there any landscaping put in that scope?
No,
Was there anything about added roads put in that scope?
it's just the things that are required for the plant operation on the roads and driveways. We are putting in, for the access to the new components of the plant as part of the current contract. The contractor is putting in new roadways within the plant for operators to get access to the new plant components.
But that's part of the scope.
That's part of the current contract, and then what we want to do is if there's funds available, again, I did not want to do a change order to release all the funds until we know everything is complete and operational. And so, but the plan is, once we know that, if everything is complete, then we will use those funds to hopefully be able to realign the driveway coming into the plant. That will make that a safer entry point for the large trucks that all slide in and out.
So cleaning the storm drains around that area was not in the scope. We can't use the money on that either.
It
It
was
has
not
to be
defined.
scoped.
I mean, the scope of the project was related to the operation of a new wastewater plant, and so,
But that should be part of the scope. You-
well, the contractor's going to, you know, all of the work that's been done during construction, he did some, move the berm around and put another driveway access in off of Goliad Road for him to get access. All those things are going to be removed by the contractor as part of his current contract and then relined and regraded so it drains properly. So that's all part of his current contract. Those are just temporary measures he took to allow him to construct those large structures.
All right.
Okay, Councilwoman Cantu?
I was just gonna ask Mr. Leonard, how long is it guaranteed? Like, this, how many years?
Well, I mean, there's, all the equipment components have various guarantees, but typically it's about 1 year. That's the typical, there may be others that have longer periods, but depending on the equipment, it's roughly about 12 months after acceptance. That's just,
Okay, Council.
That's a good question there. If we hold on to the grants a couple of years and there's no funds to fix that warranty, can we use that grant money for that breakdown that the warranty is, it's completed? Can we utilize those grants when something goes bad after a warranty? Can we?
no, my understanding is it's got to be used under the Pepper Lawson contract, under our contract for that project. And the city can't just hold on to it because once the project is finalized out through USDA, hopefully the balance of that grant will be close to zero. And otherwise, that if there's money left, you don't have the ability to hold on to it for a year or 2 or 3 later to be able to use it later on. It's
But
just
one
not
of the
there.
things that require, Councilman, that's required for the rate study, and Raul did the rate study, they did a rate study, and based on that, that's one of the requirements that we have to have. And they come in and monitor every year how much we have to have in reserve to address those kind of things, to take care of the maintenance of that plant. And so Helen can tell you that Raul comes out every year, that's why the rates went up, so that we can ensure there's a formula that is put in place, so that we'll have monies just for that reason, to maintain this affordable plant once it's actually up and operating.
Okay, I just
But they can't.
hold on to that money as much
But once the project
we
is.
can.
Okay,
That's
so
all.
it's a use it or lose it kind of thing with the grant. You don't use it for its purpose, it goes away.
We can use it like.
Any other comments by the council? Any questions? Any citizens' comments pertaining to this?
That would be something to look into, just to make sure that those funds
Yeah.
could be utilized after a year for
I do
Something
know
that
that
went
they
wrong.
last, I'm not sure, I think it's 5 years. We have 5 years to spend. So if it started a year ago, we have 4 years left.
But don't you have, when he says his project is completed, then that starts closing down that time frame on the grant, on the grant.
I believe so.
And so
I
they
think I need to
need-
get clarification from Betty Slocum on that.
They usually, when engineer says this is signed off, this is wrote off, then you need to close your books and pay off everything and match it up with the grant people, which is you. So we can't hold it for 5 years. If he says it's completed tomorrow, you have a time frame after that to get all your records turned in. And when your records are turned in, that's when it's gotta be.
Okay, if we can get you to get that information to us, but the item at hand is consideration action to approve engineering fees for the wastewater system improvements. Any questions pertaining to that directly? What Mr. Heimer just told us. Any citizens' comments pertaining?
When are you gonna come out with that number?
Well, right now, we're in this last 30 days of getting everything operational. We'll know where we stand with the construction, and then hopefully we can move forward and do the driveway, and then if there's any funds left, hopefully, based on your approval, we can again cover our costs for this additional time.
But you do need this approval before you can go forward.
Right, but I can't tell you if it's going to be the $47,000 number or something much less than that, or maybe nothing, I don't know. Our hope is that if there's money left to cover some of our costs that have gone on for an added 3 months of having Gary there and having the monthly meetings and the normal construction admin, we're reviewing pay estimates, those things are still going on that we have to do, and that's what we're requesting, some money to reimburse us on that.
But you'll be the very last thing that gets paid.
I believe so, probably so.
Okay.
Okay, no other questions? No citizens' comments? I will entertain a motion to approve engineering fees for the wastewater system improvements.
Madam Mayor, I so moved.
I said,
I have a motion on the floor by Councilman Ortiz, seconded by Councilwoman Cantu. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 5-0. Thank you so much for all your work. And with no other business on the agenda, it's now 7:25, and that concludes our meeting. Have a great evening.